Hello and welcome back, and today I want to talk to you guys through how to set up your new TS230 QNAP NAS for the very first time. But before I go any further, there are a few little disclaimers to throw out there early doors. First and foremost, this video is being recorded during self-isolation and lockdown and the widespread COVID isolation that is taking place all around the world. So consequently, I am accessing this QNAP NAS here remotely from my office in where its location is somewhere else in the country. So I am using a couple of different ways in which to access this device remotely in order to set it up. Generally, when you set this device up for the first time for yourself, it will be in your local area network and you'll be able to set it up a great deal easier than for me. So I'll let you know if there's any little steps that I have to introduce just for my own personal setup that you won't have to consider. The next thing to bear in mind is this video, the reason I'm focusing on the TS230 here is because although there are a lot of QNAP NAS and the setups, the main way you would set them all up from day one is very, very similar, this NAS is very much a budget solution, and chances are the majority of people that buy this device have never had a NAS before. Even if you have owned a NAS before this, chances are you've had one for a number of years, and this is a small upgrade. Consequently, you may not know how to set this up. So although the steps that we're going to go through today apply to largely any QNAP NAS, I'm focusing on this device for this video because the target audience for a NAS like this may not be too clued up on NAS. Last thing, the steps in this video take place after you have physically connected the NAS. What that means is that you've unboxed this NAS device, you have connected a LAN cable here on the rear in this area to your router for internet from your internet service provider or a switch, and you've connected a power cable to the base of the device here using the power cable included with the device. On top of that, make sure you have installed 2 hard drives, or 1 hard drive indeed, inside the device. That is a SATA hard drive. You will need at least 1 drive to finish this installation, so make sure you've installed a hard drive inside the device and you have connected those cables that we've just discussed there on the rear. The last thing you're going to need to do is make sure you've downloaded this tool here. QFinder Pro is completely free from QNAP, and you will need it in a little bit to find a device on your network. It's available for a bunch of platforms, as you can see here. You can even do it within just the web browser on its own. So there's lots of ways to do it there. So make sure you've got that tool downloaded and installed. So back to this. Once you've connected that device and connected the cables and the power and installed a hard drive, click the power button there on the bottom, and then leave it for about 3 to 4 minutes for the device to spin up. You'll know when it's ready because it will beep. So the next thing you need to do is make sure you're using a computer that's on the same network as the NAS. In caveman speak, that means make sure that the NAS and your PC or laptop or MacBook or whatever is on the same internet connection. Typically that means they're going to be on the same network. So once you've found them on there, make sure they're on the same network. Open up that QFinder tool we've just discussed. You can see it here on screen. As you can see here from screen, I've got 3 NASes here on my local area network. I happen to test quite a lot of NASes, but on your screen you're not going to be seeing anything here. So the first thing you need to do is click this icon right here, and this will refresh the available list of NASes in your local area network, and it should find the NAS in question. Now as it finishes scanning the area, it will notify you if there is a NAS in the network that is not initialized. That will be your NAS. You can either click yes here to engage with it, or just double click here on the screen. For now we're going to click yes. It opens up a new tab in your web browser, as you see here. This web browser here will let you set up the device for the very first time. The first thing you're going to need to do is install the firmware. In this case, it's QTS 4.4.2. Otherwise, it will ask you to scan the internet for a new copy of the firmware, and that will be done automatically in the background. Generally, most QNAP NASes arrive with a copy of the firmware included with the device, but as the firmware for most of these NAS brands is constantly being updated to stay ahead of any exploits and making sure your data is safe, there may be a newer version available. For now, I'm going to click Start to download the latest firmware onto this NAS, so in order for the installation of that firmware onto the QNAP TS230. Now, as you can see, it's mentioning here about the warranty service, and the majority of QNAP NASs will arrive with 2 years of warranty. But you can register for an extension to your warranty, as you can see here on screen. I'm not going to do that now, but it's definitely an option for you moving forward if you want to extend the lifespan and coverage of your QNAP product. Here on the Smart Installation screen, we begin the installation of QTS and the operating system entirely on this NAS. Click Smart Installation Guide and it will begin the installation. First thing we need to do is name the NAS, and you can see here on screen we're given the ability to name the NAS. I'm going to call this 230 test because I will be using this NAS for a few videos moving forward. Next, we have to add a password, and I recommend installing a password that's as safe as possible. Again, I would recommend using something alphanumerical, and if the device gets reset to defaults, it's worth remembering that a device that gets reset to defaults can be logged into with the password being the MAC address. This is not the default password, but can be reset to that at a later time if you need. Next, click Next, and we can move forward. Here we can set the time zone where the device is based, and obviously this will be largely based on the region you find yourself in, or it will scan the internet to find out what the time is based on your region. After that, you need to set an IP address. Now, there are two kinds of IP address option. The first one is DHCP, which automatically will assign you an IP on your network. Think of the houses on a street. Each house has a number. That is what the IP is on your network. It is one of the houses on the street of your network. You can set it so that whenever the device is turned on or off, it will automatically move around in the network to an available slot in case a slot is taken, because a number of devices in the home these days are DHCP, such as smart TVs, mobile phones and more. But if you're going to run lots of programs that are interacting with this NAS on a regular basis or other hardware, I recommend setting a static IP, and this will ensure that the device's address on your network never changes. After that, click Next, and it will ask you if you want to set up cross-file management. If all of the devices in your network are all one OS, you may not need to do this, but I would recommend making sure that you support different file systems, as it will allow those devices such as iPhones, MacBooks, Linux-based devices and Android devices to interact with the NAS as easy as a Windows device is right now. After that, we click Next. As we can see a summary of the choices we've made, we can assess and confirm and change those if we need, and otherwise we click Apply to begin the installation. Now it is going to completely clear the hard drives inside. This device in my case has a couple of Seagate Ironwolf NAS hard drives. These NAS hard drives have got no data on them, but if they did have data, it is about to be completely wiped as this device begins the installation of QTS on the NAS. For now, I'm going to click Yes. What follows now will take various time lengths based on the power of the NAS and the size of the firmware, and indeed the size of the hard drives. In most cases, this process will take somewhere between 10 to 15 minutes and will need the device to reboot. I'm going to fast forward now to the completion of this stage of the installation. Right, so when the initialization was complete, this is the screen that will be greeted to you. You won't have to refresh that page. This will eventually arrive on your browser, and from here, just go to the NAS management. Then log in with the information you created earlier. The admin account will be named admin, but you can change that later if you so choose. And from there, go ahead and log in. When you log in, the screen you'll be greeted with is known as QTS, and this QTS is the graphical user interface that you will use the very first time. I know it looks like there's a lot of windows here on screen, but all of these are there to help you, and you can get rid of them from the first time, but this only highlights to you what exactly QTS is about and what it can do. Its software applications, its hardware applications, key tasks it can perform and more. On top of that, it will ask about the data collection agreement for data to be collected in the background, and this is going to be analytical data and not your actual core data, merely utilization data that can be used by QNAP. If you don't want to agree to that, you can of course always click No. From there, it will also ask you about setting up your storage and snapshots, and from here you're going to need to set your storage up for the first time. I could show you using this window, but for now I'll show you the more direct method of doing it. For now, click Skip, and here is the storage window. We're going to minimize that while we go through the rest of the desktop user interface. And from here it introduces the Help Center, where you can find out quick tips, information, troubleshooting and more. For now, I'm not going to let Help Center launch every time QTS opens up. But for now, we're going to close that window. And lastly, we're greeted by the license store if you want to add additional licenses. The majority of you aren't going to use these facilities on day one, but more business-orientated users may eventually want to take advantage of some of the premier applications that QNAP include. For now, we're going to skip that step. In front of you here is QTS. You've got the means here to control your device as well as set up more users and more. But we're going to leave that for the next video when we talk about applications and first time things to do when you set up your NAS. For now, we're going to go into the Storage and Snapshot Manager tab that we left closed up here. Now from here we're going to need to set up our storage area, and there's two things we need to set up. The first is a storage pool. A storage pool is the total available space that utilizes the hard drives from which the rest of your storage is going to live. And then on top of that, we're going to build a volume. And a volume is a container of space that lives on the storage pool. Generally, it means you can have virtually unlimited volumes living on a storage pool. So if you intend to have one area of storage for photos, another for music, another for surveillance, another for work, and another for fun, you can put them in different volumes, all living on the same storage pool. A storage pool is made up of one or more hard drives that you can either RAID together in a number of ways or have as independent storage. For now, the first thing we need to do is set up the storage pool. From the storage pool, it will ask if we want to use Q-tier. This is something, if you're going to be introducing SSDs at a later point, you should enable. But for now, we're not going to worry too much about this on this 2-bay cost-effective NAS. We're going to click Next. From here, it will ask you to select the storage media inside the NAS that you want to put inside your storage pool. In this case, I've got my two Seagate 4TB Iron Wolf NAS hard drives. I'm going to select both of those drives. Now, from here, it will ask you which RAID configuration do you want to choose. As this is a 2-bay, only some of these options are available, but on larger NASes, more options will become available. For now, let me explain the three that we can see. JBOD, or just a bunch of drives, is just when each of the individual drives are on their own. Each drive is independent and can have their own volumes on each storage pool. A RAID 0 combines the total storage, so both 4TB drives coming up to 8 terabytes, and pulls all that storage together for one giant storage pool. However, if one of those drives fails due to a hardware failure, all of your data is lost, as each stripe of data, every wave of data, is written across both disks. Lastly, there's a RAID 1, and this is when the two drives are effectively mirrors of one another, with read and write operations happening to both disks simultaneously, and it's with exactly the same data being read and written to them. Consequently, if you lose one disk in a RAID 1, all of your data is still fine because it's on the other disk. For now, I'm going to select a RAID 1 environment, and then I'm going to click Next. From here, you can set up an alert threshold, and what this means is if more than this percentage of the overall storage space is utilized, the device will alert you to let you know that you're running out of available storage space. I'm going to disable this alert, but I encourage most users to have it on there. I'm disabling it because in my future videos, I will be showing the overall read and write operations of this device and burning through many terabytes of data, but for you, you may wish to enable that option. Clicking Next, you can then overview the settings you've created, and if they're all okay, click Create. Once this is done, it will let you know that the data on those disks, such as it is, will be erased, and if you click OK, it will start building your storage pool. Shortly, it is going to ask, while the storage pool is being created, if you'd like to create a volume. That volume is where, ultimately, all of your data is going to be accessible. All of the folders that you utilize, all of the applications and their respective data will live on the storage pool, on the volume. So from there, you're going to need to create as many files and folders as you're going to need, although it will create several default folders right there at the beginning. For now, I'm going to fast forward to the completion of the storage pool setup and when it asks us to create our new volume. As you can see in the background, the storage pool has been created, although synchronization may still be taking place, which I'll show you shortly. But for now, we now need to create our volume. So from here, click New Volume. It will then ask you to select which storage pool you'd like to use. In our case, we've only created one pool, so that's the one we're going to use. But if there were hard drives spare, we could create new storage pools. On top of that, you can utilize different volume types with 3 kinds of volume. Typically, most users will use a thick volume, and what that means is different kinds of file formats and space utilization. As you can see, snapshots are only supported on thick and thin volumes, whereas space allocation, where you can expand the overall storage utilizing a storage expansion or adding bigger drives, will only be possible on thick or thin volumes. From here, we then click Next. Now it will ask us how much of the storage on the storage pool do we want to use. For now, we're going to go to set that to max, and we're going to utilize all of the space on that storage pool. If we chose, we could create multiple volumes on this storage pool, each of different sizes and variables for different file types. You don't have to do that, but it's one of the things you can do to separate your data accordingly. From here, we're going to click Next. As you can see, it will summarize the settings we've created, and from now, we're going to click Finish. Now, chances are it is going to alert us about the 80% storage threshold that the alert that I've left on the volume. So when that happens, don't worry. That's just because of the way that I've set up this device. But for now, we click Close. And as we can see here, it is now creating our volumes. The storage pool is created, and if we go over to the storage overview, we'll be able to see that it is creating our storage area. If we go to disks, we'll be able to see not only a graphic of our NAS, but we can see more information about the individual NAS drives we've got inside here. We can run individual performance tests. We can even check the health of the disks. And of course, with Seagate Iron Wolf drives, they do arrive with Seagate's Iron Wolf Health Management, which allows you to test and double check a lot of the background health of your disk on a regular basis. So we're going to leave that to complete its storage creation there in the background, which may take, depending on the size of the drives, anywhere from 5 minutes to 5 hours, depending on the size of the drives and the complexity of the RAID configuration that you are utilizing. At the top here, you can get real-time information about the synchronization of your RAID. RAIDs take a great deal longer than traditional storage utilization. Normally, a RAID build will take up to a day, so don't be surprised if this synchronization states that it will take 97 hours or more. That will decrease, but will still take somewhere from 6 to 12 to 24 hours. You can still utilize the NAS during this time. It just means you're going to be able to use it with performance dipping ever so slightly until synchronization is complete. In order to interact with the data on your NAS, you need to use, by default, the File Station application. There's loads of other ways to do it, but the first time you use a NAS, it will be the best way to do it. As the storage volume has not been finished yet, as you can see, we don't have any folders, and it's highlighting that no storage volume is created. Shortly though, with the creation of both the storage pool RAID and the volume, multiple folders will appear here, and from here we'll be able to interact with our NAS. In our next video, we're going to talk about how to set up individual applications on this NAS, as well as creating multiple users with different levels of control and permissions within the NAS. And lastly, we will create a folder on our local PC that allows us to interact with a folder on our PC or Mac system locally that is living on the NAS, that saves us having to interact with the QTS browser menu when all we want to do is check out our data. In another video, I will talk about how to allow internet access between you and your QNAP NAS, be it a TS230 or any other QNAP NAS utilizing my QNAP Cloud. And right now we can see that that volume is almost finished completing. We're going to end the video when that volume is complete, which will be done shortly. And then I'll show you guys how to make a shared folder. If we make our way over to the File Station application here, As we can see, while it's formatting, the volume is now completed, it says at the bottom. So now if we open up the File Station application, we'll be able to see that those core files and folders will be created shortly. And although the RAID isn't completed, the storage volume will be. Move that there and have a look. We can see that the formatting is still not quite complete, but it really is that straightforward to create the storage area on your NAS for the very first time. It's creating those default folders for us on the File Station application, and very shortly we'll be able to see all of those files and folders that moving forward we can use for backups, local DLNA media support, Plex Media Server, and more. There we go, the volume is now completed and the default folders are still in the process of creation. Generally, there will be folders for individual home users as well as ones for multimedia. You can change these and you are not locked into the files and folders that QNAP will create during the volume creation process. And now the folders have been created. As you can see there in the background, it's now optimizing the storage that we've created, making sure that the RAID configuration is the best it can be. And we've got all of our folders here that are set by default. In order to add a new folder, we simply need to go to the Create Folder option here, and you can either create a subfolder within this list or a shared folder. A shared folder will be a folder that can be accessed via the network on any connected device. So in the case of here, we're going to call this one Share Test. And from there, we're going to say it lives on the volume that we've just created, and then we click Create. And it's as simple as that. This folder will now be findable over the local area network, connected by DLNA media devices such as Amazon Fire Stick, mobile phones, tablets, anywhere on the local area network. You will still need the password to access it, but now this folder will be network accessible. If you want to add this folder to your PC or Mac system, simply open up the QFinder tool from earlier, find the NAS that you've added, right click, and then go down to Map Network Drive. Now I'm going to have to refresh that because obviously when it scanned earlier on, the NAS hadn't completed. And now we've completed the installation, we can click Cancel there, right click and go to Map Network Drive. From mapping the network drive, it will then contact the NAS. It will ask us for the login information for this network attached storage device, and then once we've logged in, like so, it will then list the currently available shared folders, and it will find our Share Test folder. So as you can see, there's the Share Test folder. From there, we're going to map this network drive, and then we assign a letter. For the ease of convenience, we're going to go for the letter Q. On a Mac, it will be slightly different as it will appear on Finder, but in Windows, simply click Finish, and then it will then add this drive to your currently available folders. As you can see here, there is the Q folder. From here, you can either right click and then add it to your quick access menu on the left hand side of the screen, or you can just create a shortcut on your desktop. Now as we can see here, here is the folder. And from here, I can then move forward, open up a folder on this PC that I'm utilizing. We'll grab a folder, this picture of a graphics card for example, we're going to copy it and then paste it into this folder. And this is all being done on the Windows side, not utilizing the web browser. As we can see, it's added that file, and if we make our way into the NAS and go into the share file, the Share Test folder, refresh that folder, and there's the file that we've just uploaded from our local PC off that graphics card. It's as straightforward as that. But there's loads of other ways in which you can interact with this device using your mobile and desktop devices, both wirelessly and on the local area network. But I'll save that for the next video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you've got any questions about the utilization of your QNAP TS230, then do let me know in the comments. And bear in mind that the majority of these steps can be applied to any QNAP NAS. But otherwise, click like if you've enjoyed this video, click subscribe to learn more, and I'll see you next time.